Ju.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Keisha Davis, who is the county's health officer. Our special guest scheduled for today is U.S. Representative Mr. Jamie Raskin. He will join us shortly. He's actually on the floor, so he might or might not join us. We'll be on standby for that one. And in the meantime, Mr. County Executive, let's get started.
All right. So thank everybody here for being here again today. And we're hoping that Jamie will be able to jump into this call when he's ready. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk, some of the stuff we
There he is. He just joined us. He's right there, Mr. County Executive. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Hello, Mark. Hey, man.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
So I'm going to do a quick little introduction to where we are and then hand it right over to you. The county is unpacking the impact of the new federal spending bill. And as I think you know, worst of the cuts won't take place in some cases until 2027. Very clever of the Republicans to make sure that the worst things they're doing after the election. But when they do it, it's going to have a devastating effect to millions of Americans. On the local level, for example, nearly 2 out of every 3 Montgomery County nursing home residents are supported by Medicaid funding. And without Medicaid funding, it's likely that some of the nursing homes aren't going to survive. So I've already been talking with county public health leaders to prepare as best we're able to. Unfortunately, those cuts are only part of the problem. The federal tax bill cuts funding to fight hunger and instead funds things like ICE raids, prisons, and cuts in taxes for billionaires. So I'm far from anyone disappointed and angered about these changes, and I want to take this moment to introduce my good friend and our great Congressman, Jamie Raskin, to this week's media briefing so we can take a deeper dive into what you're seeing at the Capitol. Jamie, always a pleasure to have you here.
I'm delighted to be with you, Mark. I wish it were under better political circumstances, but it is what it is, and I want to thank you and the County Council and all of our friends for hanging tough through this very, very tough time.
I want to introduce you to somebody real quickly. Tell them who you are. She's one of my interns.
My name's Daniela Naaman. I'm a rising junior at Wootton High School. And
Where are you?
Wootton.
At Wootton. Great to see you, Daniela. What a pleasure to meet you.
And she's interning with Scott in our PIO department.
It's a great experience. I'm really glad.
That's awesome.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you. So a little personal human touch to all this. So where do you think we sit right now?
Well, everybody saw that that Congress has passed this big, wretched, abominable bill. 14 million Americans face losing their Medicaid. That's the cold, bitter reality at the center of this thing. Tens of millions of people will face SNAP benefit cuts, nutrition cuts, loss of food programs. And all of that is just to pay for a massive tax break for the wealthiest companies and people, because we are going to add $3.5 trillion to the national debt. So it's not like there's even any fiscal austerity here. It's totally profligate and reckless, but all for the purposes of an upward redistribution of wealth. Perhaps a lot of economists are saying the greatest upward redistribution of wealth in American history. Now, we've already been punished severely by the loss of thousands of federal jobs. We know that the Agency for International Development Workers, the aid workers, got hit first. We were able to reverse some of that with the litigation about probationary workers, but a lot of those people are still in trouble, and lots of aid workers have lost their jobs. NIH workers have been under attack. Treasury workers have been under attack. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau workers have been under attack. Friday, 1,400 Department of State workers lost their jobs as our Secretary of State, our Secretary of or a director of the Agency of International Development, our national security advisor, our national archivist, all of that wrapped up into one guy. Marco Rubio took a break from his 4 or 5 jobs to come and sack 1,400 of our people, all of whom have one job, and we're doing overwhelmingly a great job for America. And China is howling and hooting and hollering about it, and Putin is celebrating. Everybody's celebrating because as we withdraw from soft power and negotiation and diplomacy and human rights and working for social development, the Chinese government is moving in. Other governments are moving in to take America's place. So a lot of our people got caught up in that. And so to add insult to injury, now on top of these mass layoffs taking place throughout the federal government, we get all of the cutbacks in benefits. And it's not just SNAP and Medicaid, and more than 45% of kids in Maryland depend on Medicaid in one form or another. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of children who are going to be affected. But it's not just that, it's just basic federal services. It's going to be people getting through to the IRS, people getting through to the Social Security Administration. We've already seen lots of layoffs and firing take place in those agencies, and a loss of the effectiveness of the services. A lot of what my office does is we try to intervene to help our people get Social Security and Medicare and VA benefits and Medicaid. But like what they're doing to the Veterans Administration is just shocking in terms of firing people, sacking people, and continuing that whole Doge experiment, and which not even Elon Musk believes in anymore. He left town a long time ago, and yet we're now left to deal with all of the human consequences and the bureaucratic flotsam and jetsam and dysfunction created by this attack on the government of our people.
It's kind of scary. I was, two of the things that really distress me, for people to talk about economic development, which the Republicans love to have the mantle of that, and, growing America, the cuts to the clean energy industries are astounding. The United States, there's no reason why we are not international leaders and exporters of that technology. And he's kind of guaranteed that America will not sell to any world markets in the largest sector that's expanding. And the same with the cuts to NIH. There's so much that comes out of there that relates to medicine that winds up, frankly, being monetized. It does all the great things for human beings, but behind all that, there's a lot of monetization from the work that NIH produces, and they're walking away from that. How do they rationalize that?
It's a huge victory for the carbon kings, for oil, gas, and coal. Meantime, we are yielding the field. We are ceding the field of clean, renewable energy systems, wind and solar and others, to China. And this is one of the reasons that Elon Musk came out swinging against it and said, we can't do this. You're investing in the energy systems of the past. And he at least used to be very outspoken about climate change, but certainly all of the climate change groups are saying this is a nightmare in terms of suddenly reinvesting in a massive way in the carbon industries, and then disengaging from wind and solar, which are not only the renewable, safe energies that are going to be sustainable over time, but they're the ones that are cheaper. So everybody's utility bills are going to be jumping up, through the roof, going up everywhere to pay for a disastrous environmental policy, while the environmental calamities are piling up around the country, from wildfires to hurricanes to massive storms, the flooding that we just saw in Texas, which has been absolutely catastrophic for the people there. If Vladimir Putin were given the keys to our society and set out to try to dismantle our institutions and to render us defenseless against climate change and catastrophic weather events, and potential new infectious diseases and contagions, he could have done no better than what Donald Trump and Elon Musk have done to us already. And they're really just getting started.
It feels a lot like that this is serving other interests other than the interests of the American people. And even in some sense, interests of some even American businesses, to the extent we could take them backwards. And I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan, and I'm always reminded of a lyric in Springsteen's song Youngstown, where he talks about the rubble of the steel mills when disinvestment in the steel mills collapsed America's steel industry. And he says the big boys did what even Hitler couldn't do, because Hitler would have dreamed of collapsing American industry. And to see Trump following in his footsteps, it's disturbing.
Yeah.
Is there any sense, there are people who are talking about clawing back some of the cuts? Is there any possibility that some rationality might emerge, at least in some corners of this?
Well, look, I mean, we're going to have to run on this. I mean, the Democrats in Congress are going to have to run on repealing all of these devastating cuts in the 2026 election. They've scheduled a lot of them to go into effect right after the election's over, hoping that people wouldn't feel the pain. Of course, we're already seeing the closure of rural hospitals, and we're seeing dramatic changes take place in preparation for these, for the $1 billion cut that's coming to Medicaid. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to really put this before the American people, because the pain is going to be shocking and widespread when you add up all of the federal job cuts, the dismantling of solar and wind companies, and when you add in the attack on nutrition, SNAP benefits, we're going to see spreading hunger again. In a situation where there are already a lot of people who are depending on soup kitchens and homeless shelters, as you know. So, but I don't think that there's much hope of getting the GOP majority or Donald Trump to turn around on this in the next, the next 18 months. And so we're going to have to take it back to the people, and the people are going to have to decide whether this was a wise course of action. The public opinion polls already show it's one of the most unpopular pieces of legislation that any president has ever advanced.
I think he's gone so far on the immigration thing, he seems to have reversed the polling on immigration in the country. Everybody, even I saw some comment from Joe Rogan of all people that, everybody thought this was about the bad guys. He's not discriminating. Bad guys, good guys. It's like anybody who's brown, ask questions later, get him out of the country if he can.
Well, look, you can obviously win in the polls just saying, should we get rid of violent criminal felons who are in the country illegally? Everybody is going to support that. But, we're way, way beyond that point. Now we're at the point of ICE agents in unmarked cars appearing in people's communities and neighborhoods, masked, without any identification, conducting warrantless arrests, completely in violation of the Fourth Amendment, just sweeping people off of the street. And if, we had not been able to go to court all over the country and had the Supreme Court not done the right thing, they would just be airlifting people to random third-party countries. I mean, I wouldn't even call that a deportation, really. A deportation is sending somebody back to where they came from. I mean, this is in complete violation of, UN human rights law, that you just take people and send them to a random country where they might not speak the language, they don't know anybody, and the conditions can be atrocious, as they are with the the CICOT prison in El Salvador, which is a torturer's dungeon.
We have a lovely one of our own apparently in Florida now. Alligator Alcatraz.
So look, I mean, this is something that goes back to the Alien and Sedition Acts of the 1790s, Mark. it starts as an attack on the most marginal people in society, but it becomes an attack on everybody, and you build up kind of a police state structure. In addition to everything else, that monstrosity of a bill has turned ICE into by far the largest law enforcement organization in the country, far bigger than the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency combined. And, you know, I met a U.S. Marshal the other day who told me that they are pulling air marshals off of security at airports to go and sit on the flights, deporting people from the country. So they're pulling people off of FBI details, DEA details, drug enforcement, in order to put them into the ICE machinery. And now they're going to have another $40 million for this year, and then another $40 million for the next year in what was passed out of Congress.
Is there any possibility that the Democrats would introduce bills to restore cuts and force the Republicans to vote against those bills? Because, you know, in what they did, they were able to escape in this kind of shock and awe approach to the budget.
Yeah.
Where you don't pay much attention to any little thing because there's so many things.
Yeah.
If you introduce bills one by one to restore Head Start funding and other, and
Sure.
to vote against it, does that help?
We will be advancing those at every opportunity, which basically means amendments in committee bill markup sessions and on the floor to the extent that they will allow us to get amendments on the floor. And I know and trust that you know, our senators will be doing the exact same thing over on the Senate side on the floor, and just making them vote over and over again to support these Medicaid cuts if that's what they want to do, or giving them the chance to turn around on it. I mean, I've been cheered the last couple of days, Mark, because a lot of our Republican colleagues have broken with the White House over the Epstein files. And we are all for making the Epstein files public. We are all for transparency. But Donald Trump, you know, he didn't promise to throw 14 million people off of their Medicaid healthcare. He did promise to release those files, and he should. I just hope that some of our Republican colleagues will begin to rethink some of their other entanglements with Donald Trump's agenda. I mean, Trump said himself that the Republican Party will lose if it starts cutting people's Medicaid and their Medicare. It's as if he doesn't know what's in his own legislation, or he wants to somehow distance himself from it. That is his bill that he powered through Congress, when a lot of the Republicans from swing districts were saying, hey, wait a second, I don't know that I really want to do this. And you know what they told them? They said, well, we're going to be re-gerrymandering, making even more extreme the gerrymandering in states like Texas, Ohio, and Florida, which is what they're planning to do next week, starting in Texas. So they're basically saying, we understand how unpopular this is, but we're going to save you by trying to further slice and dice and gerrymander the U.S. House districts. Well, we'll see whether or not that works. We're going to do everything we can to stop them. The idea of a mid-decade nationwide gerrymandering, or at least in the states where they feel like they can add up a few extra seats, is so sinister and so cynical that I hope there will be popular revulsion and rejection of that. But as you can tell, we're dealing in a completely lawless kind of situation.
Where do you think the courts come on that?
Mr. Executive, if I may, real quick, let me just double check. Congressman, do you have a hard stop at 2 p.m.?
I think I do. Let me just see if there's any flexibility here. Give me 1 second.
Okay. For which case, so to see if we can take some questions from members of the media, Mr. County Executive. Just double checking here.
Let's see. It looks like I've got until, but I could push that to 2:05. So I've got.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Questions from the press.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Members of the media, as you heard, the congressman has a hard stop at 2:05. Any questions? I see Jeannie Bixby, but that's today. Good afternoon, Jeannie. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Lorna. Hi, Congressman Raskin. I know you spoke a little bit about how your hope is that some voters will see what's happening and perhaps vote differently next time. But in the meantime, what are you doing in your office to help your constituency even when there's some legislation that's just going to get through or not going to get through based on who's in office right now.
Right. We are struggling to make the federal government work every single day for our people. And so some of that is dealing with OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, for people who are leaving the government. I wrote a letter of protest and had, I don't know, several dozen members join me against their firing HR managers and people to OPM, because we need these people to, get people their final payments if they have any leftover vacation pay or sick pay. And, there's a whole lot of paperwork associated with leaving, which was piling up. So we're trying to deal with OPM, but we're also trying to deal with restoring people to their jobs. The guest that I brought with me to the joint session State of the Union address, Dr. Lauren McGee, has been restored to her job. That's one small bit of good news, but she had been kicked out of her job on February 14th in that Valentine's Day massacre by Elon Musk. But she is going back to working on childhood cancer, pediatric science and research at NIH, which is a good thing. So, it's at the very micro level what we're doing, trying to help people with their VA checks, make sure they can get VA appointments. We're trying to make sure that people are not lost in the shuffle with the Social Security Administration, with all of the dramatic changes and reshuffling that have been taking place there. So that's what we're doing at the micro level. At the same time, at the macro level, we've been trying to stop this whole onslaught.
Thank you. And just if I can have a quick follow-up, I know I talked to your colleague, Congresswoman McLean Delaney, recently, and she said her office has seen something like a threefold increase in constituents seeking assistance from her office. Are you seeing a similar volume?
Yes. I mean, we have an extraordinary increase that's basically taken place over the course of this whole year in terms of calls, requests for help. And I just want to give a shout out to the team in my district office, Kathleen Connor, and all of the remarkable people who work there. They are just, they've worked many weeks just around the clock to try to deal with the overflow of problems that have been caused by the Trump administration, because we have so many federal workers and so many people who are beneficiaries of federal programs who depend on them. So we're doing everything we can to help people at that level. I'm doing everything I can on a daily basis to stop the further destruction of federal departments and programs. And then whatever I can do nationally to try to turn the political situation around and cut this reign of terror in half in November of 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. I see Judith Ruth, the Greater Olney News, has her hand up. Hi, good afternoon, Judith.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Congressman.
Hello, Judy.
Hi, good to see you again. I attended one of your many community meetings a couple of months ago, and in that meeting, you had suggested to people about reaching out to friends and relatives who live in areas that are predominantly Republican. You were talking about the midterms and trying to get them to convince them that they need to talk to their representatives, make their representatives have town hall meetings, that sort of thing. So my sister happens to live in York County, Pennsylvania, which is the most Republican enclave, I believe, in Pennsylvania. I think we're the only Democrats in that area. But anyway, so she went and she gathered a whole group of people, I mean, a couple of hundred, and they went to the offices of Congressman Lloyd Smucker and Scott Perry, and they tried to make them come out of their office and talk to them, and they hid in their offices. They would not come out and speak to the people. So I don't really know what the question is, except to say, how do you battle that? I mean, why can't we get any Republicans to be heroes and to spend time with their people and listen to what they have to say?
Well, I appreciate that sad story because it captures a lot of what my daily experience is in trying to reach out to Republicans to get them to join me on different projects. And it's never been this difficult. I think there is a regime of fear that has generally come down over their party. Now, they do seem to have broken a little bit over the Epstein files, because Donald Trump, for whatever reason, wants to sweep everything under the rug right now after campaigning on release of the Epstein files. And he, of course, was friends with Epstein. Nobody's denied that. And there's all kinds of photos and video of them together. Nobody's denied that. We don't know why he has been so intransigent, but a lot of the Republicans are saying, hey, we promised we would do this. But all I can say is, I wish that Congressman Smucker and Congressman Perry would show, an equal willingness to question the policy initiatives like dismantling Medicaid coverage for people and, destroying the SNAP program for millions of people. But so far, we haven't seen it. I have traveled to a lot of those red districts myself, including in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey and in New York. I went to Long Island, to the 1st District and the 2nd District, to Mr. Barbarino's district. And, the thousands of people came. People are very frustrated. People understand what's taking place. And Mark's right that they don't necessarily capture every single attack on every single program and benefit, but people are aware of the ones that are targeting them specifically. There's so many people who have, a child with special needs, have a child with a disability, and they understand exactly how critical Medicaid is, both for the kids as kids and also when they, reach the age of majority and are trying to support themselves. I know a lot of young people who are actually able to lead a really good life here in Montgomery County with the county and state infrastructure we have, with the help of Medicaid. And pulling the plug on Medicaid just could lead to a collapse of everything we've built up in terms of creating a meaningful place for everybody in our society to participate, to work, to make money, to learn, and so on. It's just, it's very demoralizing. And so a lot of my Republican colleagues are just afraid of Donald Trump. They'll tweet against them, they'll run somebody against them. Hey, it's not fun to have the President of the United States send out a Truth Social missive against you. He did it to me last week, and he called me a loser in capital, with a capital L, and he called me a dope and all that stuff. But, no matter how much we've clashed before, it's, really something when you get the President of the United States like attacking you directly. And I think he said he was going to wipe the smile off my ugly face or whatever. And, I'm trying to keep the subject on the ugliness of their policies, which is really what we should be talking about in politics, not the schoolyard insults. But I said, since you gave me a schoolyard insult, I'm going to give you one. You're stealing school lunch, not from one kid this time, but from millions of kids. And you should take it back and cut it out.
Thank you, Judith. Kate Ryan, I believe the congressman has 1 minute left. Go ahead, Kate.
I appreciate that. Hey, Representative, I have a very quick question for you and you talked about schoolyards, education department, with the gutting of, half the staff there. How might this affect Maryland school districts? And are you hearing from superintendents or the state Board of Education on what could happen and what their needs are?
Well, yes. We've already seen the closure, for example, of our regional Office of Civil Rights Enforcement, or maybe it's technically still open, but we've lost the vast majority of the staff. They just got rid of them. So when you think about Title VI civil rights enforcement, about major problems with things like anti-Semitism and racism in the schools, they're dismantling the infrastructure that allows us to deal with that. Title IX. How are we going to have Title IX enforcement with the gutting of the Department of Education? Title I, which tries to close the gap between wealthier school districts and poor school districts. Most states don't have Maryland's kind of commitment to making sure that everybody gets a first-class, excellent education regardless of their zip code. So it's a real problem, this dismantling of the Department of Education. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has allowed the slashing of staff to continue apace. They can't technically abolish or delete the department because it was created by Congress, but they're certainly hollowing it out. And so we continue to fight that. And it underscores the importance of states and localities making that critical investment in education. And we're blessed to live in a county that has made that kind of commitment to young people and to education, and shows. I mean, we're pretty much, I haven't checked recently, but we used to be anyway, the number one educated county and the number one educated state in the country, but I'm sure we're close to it if we're not still number one, even through the hard times that we've made that commitment. And it shows in the quality of life here, because in the states and counties where they don't make that investment in public education and every kid's future, where they don't make that investment in public health and hospitals and medical attention, where they don't make that investment in public parks and recreation, like the incredible ones we've got in Montgomery County, it demoralizes people and it begins to deteriorate the quality of life for everybody. So look, we're going to get through these very tough times. We're going to get through by being honest about what we're facing, and everybody pulling together to try to make decisions that will work for the public interest and the common good of all. And we will come through it stronger than we were before. And I want to thank you again, County Executive Elrich, you and the County Council and our Board of Education and everybody for hanging tough through such a tough time, when we get to watch right next door what's happening, but we can continue to be an example to the country of what it means to act with real solidarity.
Thank you, Congressman. We want to be respectful of your time. It's 2:07. We know you need to depart, so thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
I'll see you.
Take care.
Mr. County Executive, please continue. Thank you.
All right. That was a cheery update. I think we all know what we're facing, so it's hard to expect anything that would be cheery in the circumstances we're in right now. Later today, I'm going to be joining Governor Westmore, though, in Germantown to welcome AeroVironment Inc.'s new manufacturing and development facility. AeroVironment just acquired BlueHalo, which was a Montgomery County company and a great success story. And the county provided $100,000 in a conditional grant through our Economic Development Fund to support their hiring of 200 high-tech jobs here. The Maryland Department of Commerce contributed $1 million conditional loan and a $50,000 grant through the Partnership for Workforce Quality program to support this job growth and to keep 400 other jobs in the state. So this is a great victory for us and for Maryland. The new cutting-edge research and development manufacturing facility in Germantown represents a major investment in Maryland's thriving innovation economy. And inside advanced engineering labs and production spaces will accelerate critical technologies, especially in satellite and other space and AI solutions. The facility is already busy with talented employees working in high-tech, high-paying jobs. And I want to congratulate AeroVironment and our workforce skilled in innovation and technologies for being here for these jobs. It's a great success story, and I'm going to be there this afternoon. Look forward to seeing the governor. Earlier this week, I heard from dozens of Montgomery County employees involved in our accelerator, and that's a program which empowers county workers to get involved in improving services to residents. This time, there are 75 county employees in this graduating class looking for ways to improve their departments from within. They're advancing new ways to make the government more efficient, more friendly for the customers we serve, but also easier to work in for the workers who have to deliver those services. The accelerator program is one I started when I became county executive, and we've been doing these cohorts through this program over this whole time. And it's really great to see the enthusiasm and pride shared by the employees who've completed projects to improve the government from the inside out. in many instances, they know best what works and what doesn't work. And we're leaning on their experience and passion to make a better product for our residents. And you can read about some of the projects in the Bright Spots section at montgomerycountymd.gov/innovation. It really is, it's really a gem, and I think people would be interested in seeing how employees are approaching some of the problems in their organizations and coming up with solutions to make the organizations more successful. So I've always believed in the power of the workforce to contribute to solutions. I've always thought that the more engaged with the workforce can be in helping all of us figure out what works and what could work better. And seeing these folks actually doing this and being happy about doing it, it's really a nice thing to be participant in. I also want to remind people about the annual farm tour and harvest sale that's happening next weekend, July 26th and 27th. We have 27 farms, orchards, breweries, and wineries across the county opening their gates for free, self-guided tours. It's your chance to meet the people who grow our food, see how it's done, and experience the unique character of our agricultural reserve. There's lots to take advantage of, including tractor rides, pony rides, handmade crafts, beverage tasting for beer and wine, and I believe cider too. Most importantly, you'll get a real appreciation for the work our local farmers do every day. Montgomery County's diverse agricultural industry includes 583 farms that employ more than 10,000 people. And according to the latest agricultural census, which was produced in 2022, it accounts for more than $70 million in market value products. Over 330 of those farms produce food for stores and restaurants in Montgomery County and elsewhere. And more than 225 farms raise beef, poultry, and other livestock. 2 summers ago, we opened Crossvines, and that's a multi-purpose facility in Poolesville that's available for dining. It can host large gatherings like weddings and company retreats, but it's also a wine crush facility, or a wine pad as it's called, to help farmers in our area produce their own wine. The idea was because, oddly enough, Montgomery County is in a perfect location geographically and climate-wise to grow wine, and particularly red wines, which is of great interest to me. And I, made this proposal to create a facility that would help farmers, because the cost of making wine from grapes is expensive. And grapes, when they leave the farm as a grape, are like the number 5 value crop to a farmer. When they leave the farm in a bottle, they're the number 2 value crop. So it's important economically, and it's an opportunity to diversify our agriculture and to help give farmers, a crop that can be a high profit crop for them, which helps them stay in agriculture. Agriculture is a tough business, and it's obviously affected by the vicissitudes of the weather. And so, having a facility to aid farmers get into winemaking is important. And, our hope is that over, another 5 to 10 years, we can build a wine country comparable to the wine country that exists in Northern Virginia, where it's a real thing and people go on real tours. And we're beginning to reach a critical mass, and there are more and more vineyards opening on an annual basis. So it's exciting to see. Supporting local agriculture is good for our environment and economy. It's part of how we build a more sustainable, connected future. So I hope many people will be able to join us, grab some local wine, fresh flowers, or stock up on their favorite garden favorites. This is also a significant anniversary for Montgomery County. We had celebrated 2 events yesterday. While actions at the federal level are disheartening, we have a few milestones, and one of them is the 30-year anniversary of the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. It was born this week in 1990 as 4 separate departments were consolidated into one department. The Department of Addiction, Victim, and Mental Health Services, the Department of Family Resources, the Department of Health, and the Department of Social Services became integrated into a full-service, one-stop service center that is unique in the state of Maryland. Our HHS team has repeatedly shown their dedication to this county. It has especially been apparent during the pandemic when we worked together to follow the science, engage effectively with communities, and save lives. HHS has expanded partnerships to engage faith leaders, volunteers, and local nonprofits, now has a robust infrastructure to help vulnerable populations And that network is going to be tested, though, as we face drastic changes in federal support. We still don't know what all those changes are going to be. We know that the major cuts in Medicaid will be coming. When they arrive, will not be immediate, but some other cuts are going to be immediate. In fact, cuts to particular populations have already been directed. For example, HHS, the federal HHS has said no federal money can be spent on the work of our federally licensed health clinics. And no federal money can be spent on undocumented students attending Head Start programs in the county. So those cuts are coming, and we are doing our best to use our experience and the structures we've created to meet the needs as we're going to be able to do that. So stay tuned. We will keep people updated as we know more about what's happening. The other thing we celebrated yesterday was Americans with Disabilities Act at the HHS celebration. 5 years before the county's HHS department was actually created, the nation saw the Americans with Disabilities Act signed into law. It helped change the lives of millions of Americans by helping them access places they couldn't before and protecting them from employment discrimination. Social service programs ramped up due to the new law as well. There was a shift to community-based care for developmental disabilities, ended the institutionalization of large numbers of people who could have been in homes. I'm one of those people who had a foster child that came out of an institution in Maryland. Actually, I had 3 foster children at one point. And as a result, the focus became on helping everyone under the ADA umbrella adapt to the world. You probably don't even notice the changes like ADA accessible bathrooms and ramps in public arenas and know where they came from, but this is where they came from. They are there because 35 years ago, that ADA Act was signed into law. Groups like National Disabilities Rights Network still protect clients from discrimination. However, millions of people have benefited from the changes enacted through the ADA, not just those with disabilities. Every time you look at a curb that slopes down to the streets so that a wheelchair can go down there, it's also facilitated pedestrians and bicyclists to not have to figure out how do I get my bike off the curb. Our public health team deserves a lot of praise for its work they do on behalf of everyone who needs their help in our community. And this seems like a good time to hand it off to them for updates before I take your questions. So take it off, team.
Thank you, County Executive Elrich. It's great to have good partners in yourself and in this county, and even the comments from Councilman Raskin really speak to the importance and the investment that this county has made in understanding the social drivers of health and how health is built not just by having a doctor's office on every corner, but by investing in things like education and transportation and nutrition and clean air and clean water. And all of those go a really long way to make sure that we are having, that we continue to enjoy some of the best health outcomes in the county and in the state and in the country. Nothing really additional to add in terms of respiratory infections. COVID and RSV and flu continue to be low. I think the biggest thing to be mindful of right now is as we we are in the thick of summer season, is being mindful of the heat. Recognizing heat stroke, heat exhaustion. The state has had, we just got the updates today, the state has had 12 deaths, heat-related deaths over heat season. We had one more from last week. Montgomery County has only had 1, but all of those deaths are tragic. Most of those are in seniors over 65, so we encourage you to look out for our elderly folks, check in on them, especially if they don't have air conditioning. But important to note, when we look at heat-related ER visits, most of those are in younger populations, in the 30 to 40 and 40 to 50-year-old folks, because they are often out doing jobs and cutting lawns and doing construction and doing things that put them at risk for heat exposure. So it's an important message for everybody to remember. And we also want to think about those young babies, infants, pets. Never leave anybody in a hot car, really at any age. Don't even leave your teenagers or younger folks who don't want to go into the store with you in a hot car. It gets hot for everybody really quickly. Make sure that we are taking those precautions, that folks are safe during the season. If you are feeling overwhelmed by the heat, stop, get something to drink, move to the shade, and look out for the folks that you may be with. So thank you for that. And I will turn it back over to you, County Executive.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did see at some point, there you are. Dr. Stoddard is on the call. Any remarks this afternoon, Dr. Stoddard?
I would just say, obviously, we're tracking the potential for, more, as seems like every day of recent weeks, afternoon storms with potential for some flooding. I will also report that we just actually wrapped up earlier this afternoon a meeting with our senior leadership team to discuss what we saw play out in Texas, to try and learn some lessons in Montgomery County about how we would have done things differently under our current protocols, and how we need to review our existing protocols to learn lessons that they've learned from the flooding in Texas. We're looking at additional locations for flood sensors and the like. So there's a lot, obviously a lot of counties doing a lot to prepare for the potential for severe weather. And we recommend certainly to our residents that they understand their flood risk, and we'll be doing a lot more over the coming weeks and months to help them better understand their flood risk with our comprehensive flood management process.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Members of the media, we'll take some questions now for the county executive and county officials. Please raise your hands. Marianne Chassette, Montgomery Community Media. Good afternoon, Marianne.
Good afternoon. Thank you. For Dr. Stoddard, do you know some of those potential locations that might get new flood sensors?
So we're looking right now. I don't know any locations off the top of my head. Obviously, we're looking at exactly where we had vehicles in water over the last several weeks. So we've had a couple additional incidents. We're already in the planning process for a few locations, but we think we may add to that based on the rescues that we've had to do over the last few weeks. As soon as we wrap up the planning, I'm sure we'll be able to announce those locations. And we did get basically a all-in cost per site is about $5,000 for a flood sensor. So it's relatively inexpensive. And that's why I think we'll have the opportunity to do, a few different locations and be informed by the data moving forward. So nothing to announce just yet, but we should know pretty soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne. Members of the media, any other additional questions this afternoon? Please raise your hands. Oh, I see Tom Sherwood. Hi, good afternoon, Tom. How are you? Go ahead. Please unmute. Do you need to unmute? Can't hear you. Do you want to write your question on the chat, perhaps? No? Okay. Any other questions, members of the media?
I can't believe Tom is muted.
Not sure why.
How'd you do that?
Can you try again to unmute yourself? See if you can pop the question. No, we can't hear you. I guess you can talk. You can call Scott and ask him the questions. Thanks for joining. Any other questions? Members of the media for the county executive? This afternoon, no more questions? Scott, please follow up with Mr. Sherwood. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you can now. Yes.
Now I've lost the video, but I found the audio.
That's a great.
Awesome. We can hear you.
I heard what the county executive joked about, so I just want you to know. On a serious subject, I have been watching around the country the ICE agents, masked, no identification, heavily armed, unidentified vehicles, snatching people off the streets. I just wondered if you could give me an update on what's happening in Montgomery County. And is there any kind of local authority that can say to some of these federal agents, you have to follow the laws? You can't just take people off the street, or do these ICE agents have authority just to take anyone they want to off the street? What's happening in Montgomery County?
So far, the events have been scattered and they've been small. We have not had situations where people are going into workplaces and taking all the workers and taking them out. Most of the takings have been targeted. At least that's what we've been told. That they were looking for somebody if they show up at somebody's house, or they showed up at or stopped the car. It was a targeted stop. That's the most part. But they've also taken people as what we would call collateral damage. That if somebody's with the person they're targeting and they look brown, and I don't know if it matters if they speak with an accent or not, they may well wind up getting questioned and may wind up being taken as well. But that's what we've seen so far. We haven't seen anything on the scale of what you're seeing in Los Angeles. And we know that the ICE department in Maryland was not a large department. So I don't know what they've done to add to their staff yet, but we're certainly, like I said, we're not seeing the kind of raids that they've done in Los Angeles. How they do their arrests is really troubling. The lack of warrants, the ability just to grab people and take people, but we're not in a position to put somebody in between an ICE agent and another person. And that's a real problem. And I dearly wish the courts would give some clarity as to whether you can effect an arrest without a warrant. That is really troubling. And I think the president's suggestion that he wants to be able to deport Americans is even more troubling, or an indication of how deep this thing could go. But it's a real problem, and it's something none of us ever imagined we'd be seeing here.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for the audio problem.
Nah, you solved it.
No worries. Thank you, Tom.
All right. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Any more questions, members of the media, this afternoon? No more questions? Well, we can say goodbye now. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Have a great afternoon. See you next time.
Goodbye.